Oh, wow. And I'm recording, guys, just so you know.
That's
Oh,
quite
cool. Oh, wow. It's beautiful.
like
You're
Southern Cross.
you is great.
Yeah, it's
What floor
beautiful.
are you on?
The CBD. Oh,
Oh,
58.
wow.
So
Wow.
it's quite high. I've never lived this high before. I moved in
That
like our
is,
last lockdown in June.
wow.
Yeah, it's cool.
Wait,
Hey?
are you guys still on lockdown, Gwenny? What's
No, still
no?
restrictions. Like
Okay.
but really just you can't go somewhere if you're not vaccinated, and like you need to wear
Right.
masks most places. But
Right.
they've gone back to kind of opening like the borders, because all the
Awesome.
states were like blocking each other out kind of thing. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I think the governor of New York City, or New York, I guess, just decided she had a mandate for masks, but now we don't have that right now anymore. She revoked that. So,
Mm.
and we're just going to hang out for about 2 more minutes. And yeah, you guys share your favorite maybe subjects, and or your favorite professor. I see Gwenny's was Latin. Ooh, very smart. Oh, I love that though. Do you think learning Latin, do you think that maybe helped you with like other Romance languages? Can you speak other languages? Like, do you think you could learn French?
Like I learned like a little bit. I think it does help. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
But I really liked it. We learned like a lot of history. We had this kind of really old
Oh,
chilled out teacher, and if you like fell asleep, she would like protect you, and she'd get angry if anyone tried to wake you up. Just like,
she's like, she needs
yeah.
they need to sleep. Their kids don't have enough time.
Got only
And
like 4
then,
months by the end.
oh, really? Wow. Small group. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is kind of a dying. Was that in what was that in uni, or was that
No,
college?
high school. So you
High
kind of keep doing
school.
electives into high school, and then like by the last 2 years of high school, the electives are like much smaller groups.
Oh, cool. That's kind of nice though. That's fun.
Yeah, it was nice.
Um, and then your lead engineer is your favorite mentor. That's awesome. Yeah, and it's because she's real is they're motivating. Yeah, you can't go wrong with that. Hello everyone, just joining. We're just putting in the Zoom chat if you have a favorite subject in school, or had a favorite subject in school, and who is your favorite teacher mentor. And let me see if you want to share where you are and your name, and join our Slack channel. We're really promoting our Slack channel. We want everyone to join.
Oh,
Gwenny knows she's the director, or a director in Melbourne, so she knows how special and important the Slack communities are. Oh, hi, Tatiana. How are you? Oh, cool. Hi, April. Brooklyn. Yay.
what
Art
was
school.
what
I love.
instrument? Oh, sorry.
Actually, no, go ahead. I love it.
I was just wondering what
Gwenny. Yeah.
Tatiana played.
Oh, what'd you play, Tatiana?
I played the cello in high school. I played cello for a long time. Went to a bunch of art schools before
Wow.
someone let me into an engineering school. I don't know why. And now here I am.
That's
They were
awesome.
smart. I'm glad they did. That's so
So
cool.
am I.
Yeah, I played saxophone when I was in elementary school. Gwenny, you're in for a treat, because Gwenny did music. We should probably get started. So you guys can keep filling in the chat and getting to know each other, and I'll just run through some things. So yes, welcome to our Fireside Chat Series with Gwenny Warnick, Director, Women Who Code Melbourne Cloud Engineer at COSNA. And I hope I said that properly. And yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm glad everyone joined. I'm so excited to have everyone here. So our agenda is we did the icebreaker. We're going to meet Gwenny. We're going to chat with Gwenny, open up QA, do breakout rooms, and yeah, do a little networking so we all get to know each other and you guys can walk away with some new friends. Just a little bit about Women Who Code. So our mission is inspiring women to excel in technology engineer and careers. Our vision, a world where diverse women are better represented as engineers and tech leaders. And this is a slide of our code of conduct. And there's a lot here. So I'll go ahead and read a little. So Women Who Code is an inclusive community dedicated to providing an empowering experience for women who participate in or supports our community, regardless of gender, gender identity and expression, sexual orientation, ability, physical appearance, body size, race, ethnicity, age, religion, socioeconomic status, caste, creed, political affiliation, or preferred programming languages. And if you'd like to read the full version and access our incident report form, you can go to womenwhocode.com/code of conduct. Awesome. And let's meet Gwenny. So welcome everyone. This is Gwenny Warnick, our guest of honor. Gwenny is a cloud engineer and Google developer expert in Melbourne, Australia, where she is also a Women Who Code Melbourne director. She is a career changer into tech with a background in teaching, curriculum development, and music. Gwenny, you have such an interesting background. Can you give us more details or tell us more about your career change into tech?
Yes, and I'll just acknowledge, we always acknowledge in Australia the traditional owners of our land, like before we talk. So we're on Naarm, the Aboriginal language word for Melbourne, and they're a beautiful, continuous living culture, and I'm lucky to be here. The land was never ceded. But yeah, in terms of my background, kind of similar to Tatiana, maybe, who put her post in the chat. I did, after school, I did a bunch of different stuff at school, a lot of sport, a lot of music. And I ended up going into classical music, so classical double bass, the really big one for people that don't know. People usually yell out the car at you, like they'd wind down the window and be like, "Don't you wish you played the flute?" And I'm like, "Leave me alone." So that's what I did first. So that meant playing in orchestras, basically.
Wow.
And after that, like April, I became a teacher, like a teacher, English as a second language. I went to the Czech Republic for a year with the plan of eventually learning, doing a master's of double bass there. Because in the Czech Republic, if you learn to speak Czech fluently, you can do university for free, or you could when I was there.
Wow.
I didn't, because I ended up learning to teach English and working on pub crawls at night and just like speaking English most of the time, and got into like huge debt, like ended up borrowing like heaps of money off my parents, because it's very hard to make money over there as a new teacher. There's no like unions or kind of fair rates, and you get really exploited if you're not aware of what's happening. So I had to come back after a year. I went and taught at like a London, like King's College for 3 weeks on a summer camp, just to like pay for my flight home kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
And then, yeah, it was stressful. I remember eating like just rice and like soy sauce for like maybe months. I definitely had a bunch of deficiencies of like vitamins, but that's fine. It was amazing. But yeah, then came back and worked as an English teacher from then on for a long time, and a little bit casually in orchestras, and eventually moved to Melbourne in 2012. So I'm from Brisbane originally. If you know there, it's Queensland. It's very hot, very sunny, very like beachy.
Yeah.
Very outdoorsy. I'm much more, Melbourne's very like indoor cafe, kind of dark. The weather changes a lot. It's not hot. It's like much more my vibe. So that's nice being here. I just thought I was like grumpy all the time when I lived in Brisbane. But then when I moved here, I was like, oh no, it's just like hot and humid and it makes me super grumpy. So that was like good to realize. But yeah, I moved here 2012. I was still teaching then. I actually moved here with a rock band. So I was playing like bass in rock bands as well, and we all moved down. Melbourne's a much better city for music than Brisbane. So yeah, kept teaching, went into like academic support, which was sort of having students come and tell you what they didn't understand and get extra help, or what their teacher like made confusing. So you kind of saw the flip side of learning, which I really liked. And that's kind of helped me a lot actually in tech. The reason I'm mentioning these kind of random details is because I want you all to know that whatever skills you have, if you're changing into tech, those can be really valuable. If you wouldn't mind, like, could people pop in the chat if they're like in tech already, or if they're thinking of changing as well, or just keep an eye on that. I'd love to know that, and I can speak to that a little bit more. So like, are you in tech already, or are you thinking of making a change? And yeah, just ended up becoming a curriculum developer. So writing the course books that we were teaching from. And I think as a teacher, often that's something you do a lot. You make a lot of materials for your learners if you're that kind of person, and I was. But I really loved going into curriculum development. And we also wrote stuff like random aviation kind of English books, which was funny. You had to learn a lot about like aviation rules and what pilots have to know, because we couldn't put something in our like beginner English class that then they used as English and like, you know, crashed a plane or something. So it was quite an interesting environment. Thanks for popping these comments in too. I'll just keep an eye on them. Jing, in tech for 10 years. I'm jealous. I just like wish I'd come over earlier. Yeah, so after then I did curriculum writing. This is kind of when I started changing into tech. So for me, it was sort of two things that happened. One was I was working for a university that had their own in-house publisher. That's who I was writing the curriculum for. And it was super, super frustrating and like disempowering having to move the learning materials online. So this was pre-COVID. So it was when people had what's called blended learning, and they would like have these arbitrary numbers where they wanted like 10% of like a book to be online. And that might just be like a PDF. So it was really like weird thinking, and it's not really in line with how people learn. And they would have these like learning activities, things like flashcards, but they were designed very poorly. So for someone wanting to do what's best practice and like a good learning experience for their learners, you just couldn't do it, because these software engineers had designed these activities that didn't work in the way our brains work when they're learning. So that kind of made me snap and just be like, I'm learning to do this myself. I don't care how hard it is. It made me so angry that, you know, that there was this huge gap between people creating the tech and people using it, and that they were kind of ignoring the end user.
Right.
Yeah.
Which still happens, by the way, right?
Oh, all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. And that'll come up when we talk about diversity, because that's kind of probably the main reason diversity is so important. Yeah, but I also at the same time was volunteering for Girls in Tech. They're a global nonprofit, started in America. You might know them. And we have a Melbourne chapter here. And the reason I'd gotten into it was I'd started realizing the issues in tech, the kind of diversity crisis and the impacts of that. So just those kind of earlier things, like, you know, how air conditioning is designed for a kind of, it's like a 172 centimeter white average size male or something. Things like car accidents, where if we're women or...
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's why women are often cold, because our body temperatures are apparently like a couple of degrees, like our core body temperature is often 1 to 2 degrees different to men. And you work, it impacts your productivity. So there are all these inequities or like inequalities everywhere, just in everyday design. Things like, I think it was Mercedes maybe that had to pull a car like sometime in the last 5 years because the voice system wasn't recognizing women's voices. We have these issues with, you know, hand soap not being able to recognize darker skin, phones being too big for women's hands and damaging their hands. We're more likely to die in car accidents, as are children, because all of the kind of safety was designed and tested around a male's body.
Wow.
So I'd kind of started learning about that. And yeah, I was like, I want to help even if I'm not in that industry. So with Girls in Tech, I saw this information where they were asking for volunteers, and I've always had a strong kind of writing, editing skill set, and had done a lot of writing, sort of copywriting, like marketing kind of writing as it came up, also editing. So I kind of went along to this. They had I think a meetup just asking for volunteers. It was very out of my comfort zone. I'm a massive introvert, so I I kind of cringe, like going to an event with a lot of people. It makes me super uncomfortable. But I had this kind of idea in mind of the issue. And I was like, I'm a white woman, like I can use my privilege at least in that way, you know what I mean? So yeah, I went along and volunteered with them for a couple of years, just kept hearing, and I was just using non-tech skills, obviously, completely non-technical background, as like I explained, but ended up hearing all these women from different fields, and they have really amazing speakers from all over the world at their conference. Heard all of them saying, you know, if I can do it, you can do it. And around the same time, I'd ended up moving to Sydney for a few months. I lasted like 4 months. Like I just hated it. It was similar to where I came from, like very hot, very sunny, hills everywhere. Like you just sweat in 1 second. And I was so grumpy all the time again. But there was a non-profit called Code Like a Girl, who they have the goal of getting, like targeting the kind of, often it's called a pipeline problem. Whether or not that's real is like another conversation, but they target girls at a young age. So they teach coding to girls aged like 8 to 11 and 12 to 15. And they have these coding camps. And they reached out to me because of my teaching background, and they knew me from Girls in Tech, and said, would you mind like teaching some of the coding camps to these young girls? Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, I'm only like self-taught, because from when I'd been writing curriculum, I'd started finding out what programming was, had started to understand it. I'd kind of started from a point of literally like asking my partner at the time, I was like, what's HTML? Like, how does the internet work? I just didn't understand, you know, I didn't even know where to start. I was so confused. So we had like a lot of frustrating conversations.
Yeah, it is a lot.
Yeah, it blew my mind. Yeah. It's like magic. It's like modern magic.
It is.
I had a couple of friends whose husbands were engineers, and I was like, do you mind if I just ask you about it? What happens? And one of the guys, I remember, he like works for Microsoft. He was talking about how he remotes into a computer, which of course now, like I know what that is and it's not a big deal. But at the time I was like, what do you mean? Like you're typing in another computer and it's talking to your other computer. And it's like, yeah. And that also, those kind of things just also really excited me, and I kind of wanted to know, but I felt like I couldn't. I felt like, oh, I could never learn that much, you know what I mean? And eventually when I was teaching, it was just like 4 months when I was in Sydney with Code Like a Girl, they were like, no, you don't need much coding experience, just a bit of like understanding, because we have all the content. So I was like, okay, like I can try it. And I feel like that's where I really started to learn programming, even though it's really basic and kind of the building blocks, the main concepts of programming. It was really confronting, again, very out of my comfort zone. But I ended up hearing myself telling these girls, you can learn it. Don't worry if it's hard, like you'll understand it. And then I was like, why am I telling them that? And I don't believe that for myself. So
right.
Those were the kind of two things, the third thing that really made me make the switch into tech. Mm-hmm. The timing of it. Yeah, it was cool. The timing of it happened when I got back from Sydney. This was in like 2018, so not super long ago. I got this job at a really toxic workplace, very top down, family owned. Had like 137 cameras around the whole place. And
oh my gosh.
The guy was always watching people, and he'd make little video clips and then send them to the staff, and they're like, don't do this. And I was like, what is wrong with you?
What?
They went bankrupt. In
they were spending their money in the wrong places.
Yeah, they kind of couldn't make the transition online. But I ended up, this is controversial, I ended up getting fired from there for swearing. So I know in America it's less, I think it's less to swear. Here people swear just all the time. It's like really standard.
Yeah, New York it's pretty common. I think people swear a lot. Yeah.
I'm stressed.
She's shaking her head. She agrees. Yeah, we say some bad words here.
Yeah, so I basically had this meeting where this guy had been undermining me for like a month, and I sort of had a conversation, just said, look, I can't do my job if you don't let me do my job. It's pretty fucked, like what's happened. Are you willing to try like and actually talk to me directly so that I can, you know, move forward? And he said yes. And then 2 days later I got called in. The guy was like, can you come in at 9 a.m.? The main kind of the boss. And as someone with a lot of anxiety, if any of you like relate, someone saying like, can you come to a meeting without an agenda? Like the next day I was so stressed. So went in the next morning and I was like, well, do you want me to prepare anything? He's like, no, I just want to talk to you. And it was this 10-minute call. I like recorded it on my phone. It was the most just horrific, degrading like experience of my life. And they'd had these like sexist emails go around at work as well. And I'd eventually written back and said, you know, this isn't appropriate. This it's literally illegal. And I'd gotten in trouble for writing back. And I was like, well, are you talking to the guy that sent the sexist email as well? And they weren't. So they could fire me on a kind of technicality because I was on probation. I was devastated, was basically like depressed for the next, like, I don't even know how long, like 6, probably 12 months. You know, it looked just crap all the time, like put on heaps of weight, was just like emotionally eating. My skin was just like feral. I felt at this just super low point because also financially,
Right.
I moved back from Sydney. I'd moved there only for 4 months. So it was very expensive.
Right.
And when they fired me, I didn't have a job lined up. So
Right.
yeah.
It's hard. It's really hard. It's not
it was
easy.
hideous. So I like went back to my parents for Christmas and just kind of did just shitty little jobs to make any money. Like I kind of found writing articles online, like ghostwriting for people and things like that, but you'd make like nothing. So it was really hard to make any money off the kind of things I was finding last minute. Eventually I realized, well, I'd kind of had in my mind that I wanted to transition into tech and do a coding boot camp.
Right.
And I thought, well, I can start that earlier maybe. So I was going to do this job for 1 year and then save up the money. It was like $10,000 or $20,000, I think, for the boot camp. Oh, sorry, it was like 10,000. It was quite expensive.
Yeah, they can be expensive.
Yeah, I thought I can save up and then, and then do it. But I found one that was like Commonwealth supported. So in Australia, I don't know if you have the same in America. I don't think you do, but you can get, basically you can get it paid for. It's like a loan and you pay back the government when you have a job afterwards. So there was a boot camp that was like that. And yeah, that was 6 months. It was a web development boot camp.
Cool.
Like full time. Worst time in my life. Like thought it couldn't get worse. I cried every single day. No one like noticed. I would like cry secretly in shame at my like desk. Just kind of like try and look normal, but like tears would be going down my face. I felt so stupid every day. Didn't understand anything. Oh, it's hideous. Like, yeah, everyone in the class, so it was mostly guys. It was almost 40 people. And the atmosphere, like they were kind of competitive. There were like challenges every morning. And I was like, I can't even understand half a concept that we did 2 weeks ago, let alone do a challenge.
Right, because it's hard.
You know, a lot of you have been in tech. You'll know that there can be this kind of attitude of like just break things and move fast. I think that's where it's kind of inherited from, that tech bro kind of approach, where you just hack at things and like keep making mistakes. And that really doesn't feel good to me. Like I like to be kind of conscientious and like learn how to do something properly and then do it well. And I want to learn things deeply and kind of know how to do it. So that also really turned me off. But I had in my mind this kind of long term, I was like, no, I want to go into tech, because hearing those individual women in tech made me think, okay, I can do that. And I thought I want to use my life like that, you know, and to then lift other women and non-binary, like gender diverse people into the industry. So I had my kind of why, which was more powerful than how horrible it was every day.
Right.
The other frustration in the boot camp, and you'll probably, any of you who are looking to move into tech, I think a lot of you are in tech already, but for those of you looking to move in, what was I going to say? A lot of the documentation. So people will say, read the docs. They're poorly written, or there's like not enough examples. And coming from a teaching background, I know that that's not how people learn. So I'd be like, there needs to be more than one example for people to understand anything from this doc. Or the teacher would show something, I'm like, people don't learn from trying to do something they don't know how to do. So I was like also super angry all the time, because I was like, this isn't a good learning environment, like for anyone. So
well,
that was,
Gwenny, we probably need to, we need to get on to some other questions to you. So yeah, you've had a really great journey though. It's super cool. You've gone through so many different things, and a lot of women, we've all been through this, and that's why we're here supporting each other. And we just keep going. So we've kind of, you're kind of touched on this just now, really, when you're talking about you're working in a company or the docs, and I'm just curious, what you think about why it's important for women to find a company that really celebrates them and celebrates their values, and why you think, women should kind of go for jobs that mirror their personal values.
Yeah, I think in tech that's particularly important because it's a very male-dominated industry, even though it didn't begin that way. For me, with having that experience in the really toxic workplace, and then my first internship after the boot camp was in a bank, a kind of big bank, for 6 months. And I just wasn't provided support or structure or kind of engagement, like someone connecting with me and saying, what are you interested in? Where are your goals? And I respond much better that way. I need to kind of be reassured to feel safe, that I belong in a space like that. So having those two experiences, I knew that for me, I really needed a culture where I could learn slowly, because after the boot camp, I was just like, I can't learn in that way. But I was confident that I would be able to learn it over time. So I was really sure that I wanted somewhere with structure, with a healthy culture, which to me means something that's inclusive of everyone, regardless of, I think the most obvious ones we think of are like gender, sexuality, race, religion, but it's also age, it's neurodiversity, it can be class, like your socioeconomic background. And I think tech is very classist as well, very ableist. I don't identify as neurotypical, so I also found that really kind of difficult. I think there's a lot of gaps in terms of how things are explained just everywhere, because people can make a lot of assumptions about what people know or not communicate directly, and that doesn't make sense to me. So
right.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's the worst, when that happens, for sure.
So what it then meant was that from when I was in Girls in Tech, I kept an eye on all the companies that were kind of sponsoring the events. I'd learn about their culture. I'd talk to people at their companies. I would kind of find out what kind of companies were good to work at, what weren't. And I made sure that they prioritized improving diversity in the industry, or supporting that somehow, or being good allies or advocating somehow. And one of the companies I ended up working for, I actually took a traineeship there instead of a job, was the one I'm still at now, Mantle Group. And I've seen them sponsor meetups for women in tech and women in machine learning and AI. They share their space. They sponsored an office for Code Like a Girl kind of for free. So they did a lot of things in that space already. And they had a program where they only hired women and gender diverse trainees, and then moved them into junior roles or associate roles. So that was what I took, even though it was kind of a lower pay it was 4 days a week, lower pay for 9 weeks. I took that to get into that company and to be in that learning environment. And actually had the opposite experience, where I was told I kind of was really advanced because I'd had 6 months of kind of DevOps and cloud. But I still felt like I didn't know anything and I was learning slowly. So I found that really hard and would get really upset. And I kept getting this positive feedback, and I'd cry or be upset. And they'd be like, what's wrong? Why are you upset? And
We're giving you good feedback.
Yeah, I'm like, well, I think I have a trauma response to
You're I'm not used to this.
So yeah, the reason I encourage that is because it's for women, and particularly women of color and gender diverse people. You are already experiencing microaggressions everywhere in that industry. You're experiencing them when you read a document, when you talk to someone, when you go to a conference, and you are clearly told you don't belong. When the technology, the way you're even building the technology, is not inclusive. So you've really got to protect this, and this is my opinion. You have to do what's right for you. But for me, I figured out the hard way the kind of cost. So I burnt out. I was depressed for so long. And I was like, it's not worth my mental health or like my feeling my worth as a human being to be in a job in like a capitalist society. I was like, it's just not worth it. So finding a company, that honors that honors what you need, and also that honors that it changes is really important. So where I am now, they don't pressure you in terms of the pace you learn. They have multiple ways you can kind of report you're not feeling good. You got a buddy like the whole time. Yeah. So it's made a huge difference, and it's allowed me to kind of learn on my own terms. And I think that that's really important when it just isn't necessarily going to be a safe space for you in the industry. I think you've got to have like allies. Yeah. So like the reason I mentioned my lead engineer, for example, is I was so stressed joining the industry, knowing the statistics, that I kind of was bracing myself for like constant microaggressions, for people to sideline me, not give me technical tasks, because I also had Scrum Master kind of skills, and they asked me on my first role to do both. And I knew these stories of women like being pushed into like Scrum Master or business analyst roles out of technical roles. But it was because I was a junior, and that made me easier because I'm in a consultancy. It made me easier to place on a client. I didn't know that at the time though. So I was really upset. And what ended up happening because of the company I'm in is I had men like this lead engineer constantly protecting my time so much that I didn't need to. So I've had him say so many times, you know, are you doing enough technical tasks? Because I'm very good at documentation with the writing background. And things like note taking.
So it was basically, and from what I'm hearing from your experience, you know, when you're changing into tech and then having the toxic experience and then finding a positive experience, is that you can take the time to find a culture that aligns with you and who you are, and go to work and be happy every day, rather than, you know, get in a company or work with a company that doesn't, like you call it, microaggressions. Is that what you call it? What you say? You're using a word that I really like, and the word is so true. Like little, like I guess it's like passive aggressiveness, but they're microaggressions. Is that like what you're saying? I love that word, because you're right. Like that happens. So I'm gonna segue into like kind of like DIE and what this means to you, because that's essentially what we're talking about in a company, right? And how it's important for us, even if we're not there right now, or maybe we can bring that into a company and be a better influence for a company, but we want to, you know, find a common ground with diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? So like, what does DEI mean to you?
Yeah. And I'll just kind of caveat before answering that I think, it's a privilege to be able to choose where you work. So and this is the same with DEI. So you do have to protect your energy, but you have to also do what's right for you. And, you know, if you're trying to, I don't know, escape a dangerous situation or something, like sometimes you just have to do what you have to do for a while. So I guess I know that I'm saying
that's true.
Choose where you work, and, you know, I more mean find your own path and, you know, honor your own needs in the way that you best can to get yourself where you need to be.
Right. Sometimes we do have to go through the hardships. I've been there. My first company wasn't great either. It was horrible. I know your pain. So yeah.
Yeah, and I guess no company's perfect. Like even
unfortunately.
I remember you have random coffees at my company to meet people, and I had coffee with this guy that was just like, I don't think there's sexism in tech. And I was just like, excuse me? And he was also at the same like breath telling me he had no women in his computer science class. And I was like, right. Conversation. I was so like shocked. So yeah, I've had the experience of men being like, Gwenny, you're writing too many docs. Like they're amazing, but you know, we want to protect your time. But then I've at the same company, I've had experiences that aren't pleasant as well. But for the most part, they're incredible. But yeah, in terms of DEI, I think it looks different in different places. Diversity means, like I mentioned before, a mix, not just of the kind of more obvious or external factors like race, like, it can also be culture. Neurodiversity is probably the one I think of the most, probably my own bias. And class, I think, is a really hidden one. So, you know, often there are scholarships, but it's white women getting them. Or there are, like for example, I got the scholarship in the Women in Tech, like in my boot camp. We have a program that only hires women and gender diverse engineers, the one I mentioned, but there's nothing for Aboriginal people, for example, who are like the most marginalized community in Australia, despite being like the oldest culture. They have like, it's I guess similar situation in America for like First Nations people and like migrants kind of thing. So diversity for me, it's basically non-white, cis-het, able-bodied men. That's who it is in tech, depending on where you are in the world. Equity is people having a kind of equal chance to do things. And it also, to me, speaks pay equity, I think, is a really big one in tech and in all industries. So that's being paid, you know, fairly and equally for equal work, which does not happen. So like we've just had a report come out in Australia where the pay gap is still, it's like 22% or something. That's also not even getting into the topic of things like super. So women tend to bear more of the kind of hidden cost of work at home. They tend to do more, whether we're socialized, whatever the reason is, they tend to do more of the childcare if they have children. They tend to take time off for, you know, if you're pregnant or caregiving. That then, you know, are you making super? Are you an employer that's making super? And I know people in couples now or like relationships are starting to have, you know, more arrangements. Like I've got a friend that just is demanding her husband. She was Mormon originally from Utah, and she married her husband and they both like left the church. And she's just moved back to America, but she's kind of looking back now that she's become more feminist, and she's looking back thinking, all those years, like I took this hit to my career and he's just like being able to keep working. And so I'm like, ask him to pay into your super, like the amount you would have got. And she's like, I'm going to. And so I think things like that are also what we can do. Like employers are now starting to pay super. I don't know if it's the same. I'm sure it's the same in America because you tend to be a bit ahead of us. But yeah, you know, thinking about those kind of things, like are you in an equal situation, like despite your circumstances, sort of thing.
Right.
And then inclusion. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No. But I want to hear inclusion, and then I want to get to your cloud ops and ask you a few questions.
Yeah, I think inclusion's the thing that gets it's getting a little more airtime now, but it's you know, you can't have diversity without inclusion. And I think a lot of workplaces think, oh, we'll just hire more women. It's like, no, because they'll be leaving if it's not an environment that's psychologically safe or like healthy for them, which is what happens. And, you know, women have this network where, you know, they'll talk to each other, like, don't go to this company sometimes because it's not safe for them. So I think
absolutely.
Yeah, it's finding ways to run and scale in particular, because often companies, you know, might start okay, but then not scale diversely, for example. So, you know, I had this argument with my CEO. We have a flat hierarchy where I am. So it's just engineers and then CEO, CTO. I had this argument with him because he was talking about the pipeline problem. And I'm like, not a thing. Like some companies in Melbourne have 50-50. So I'm like, they're doing it. And 50-50, like men, non-men.
Yeah.
And also, with the inclusion piece, like they have no senior women in my company. And when I started, they only had 4 women and they kept hiring more men. So now I think they've gone from like 30 up to like 60 or 70 employees in the last 2 years. They're a startup. They've scaled very quickly. With all of the brands, it's like gone from 200 to 500 or something in maybe 2 years.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I was kind of saying to him, like, you know, if there's not these senior women, if there's not these pathways for women to be promoted, if there's not women and gender diverse, if there's not support and mentoring and advocacy. So if you don't have like a sponsor actually, you know, showing you in those rooms where the decisions are made, telling you like, this is how things happen, advocating for you. So men have these social networks, these informal social networks, and women and gender diverse people are often excluded from that social kind of currency.
Yeah.
So inclusion is also putting in place the mitigating kind of factors to kind of outweigh things like unconscious bias in interviews, for example. or like the fact that women are promoted at less of a fast rate than men, those kind of things.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of things that we need to fix. So inclusion, definitely. I like how you spelled out that example, because yeah, that happens a lot. And even I can think of examples at my workplace, but hopefully it's getting better, and we're all here to like hopefully encourage other women yeah, to be strong and teach others about BEI. And I think you gave a really great example, or gave great examples. But I want to talk about your cloud engineering, because we are running short on time. In about 5 minutes, I wanted to kind of open the room up so people can ask you questions. So I definitely want to get into your cloud engineering. So I have a few questions. So you've mentioned you love your job to me before. You're super excited about cloud engineering. And so my follow-up to that is, how can we get more women into cloud engineering? Why might someone choose cloud engineering over programming? And yeah, what would kind of spark interest? Like, how can we get more women to stay the course?
Yeah, I'm just writing that down. I have like literally zero short-term memory. So
I can
cloud
repeat it if you
engineering.
want.
Sorry.
Oh, I can repeat them if you want.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
Cloud engineering, firstly, like consider it if you haven't. It is the best. I got into it because I was writing code at an application level, like, one line in a file kind of thing. And I was just like, yeah, but where is this running? Like, what's it talking to? It made no sense to my brain that you would be designing something or making a design decision at that level without understanding what else is going to be happening outside of that. So that's in my first internship, I requested to go straight into Devops, which like
Gotcha.
It's not the same, but you can use it. It is used synonymously with cloud.
Yeah, lots of infrastructure.
Yeah. So I asked my partner to bring me chai. Thank you.
Well, this is Fireside Chat, and everyone should have their own cocoa. So you're great. You're doing great.
Yeah, it's just before 11 a.m. here. So yeah, with cloud, it's the other thing I like about it is very empowering, and you're really helping people. So I also was kind of like, why am I doing something in an application if it's going to run poorly and create like a bad experience or not contribute to the world kind of thing? Because I got into tech with that ideal of, I want to not only make a difference by being like a woman, but also make a difference, because with diversity, what happens is you get more robust technical solutions because people have different and
right.
That's so important in tech. So I was like, just by being there, by being different, even by being uncomfortable and not knowing what I'm doing, I still have a valid perspective, especially as a new person. So that's another like encouragement for anyone early career or new. You add value just by being there, by being you, by being able to see gaps that people who have been there so long can't see them, by forcing people to justify their design decisions, by forcing them to revise something that they took for granted and it might not be the best way anymore. So I think it's really important to kind of remember you add value at any point of the way, even if you don't know what you're doing. And for me in cloud, it's working at platform infrastructure level. So you're kind of building the platform that people run on and things like the pipelines that people use to check their code, for example, to add it into the code base. So instead of writing one application, I'm writing the code that at the moment, like I'm at a bank with thousands of employees. So we're working on the code base that every single employee in the bank has to go through to use a Google Cloud Platform account, for example. So to me, I love being impactful and being able to improve like the whole developer experience rather than just be, in my own like really kind of small area. I really like helping and I really like efficiency and scale. So it's really cool. Yeah, it's really cool in that way. Like you can kind of improve how things work. It's a culture where you're meant to share ideas. So that really appealed to me as well. Like one of the kind of DevOps principles is sharing knowledge. So it's a bit different to programming where it's that kind of, hack and figure it out by yourself, genius.
Right.
So yeah, the DevOps kind of culture also appealed to me, or the cloud culture.
Oh, interesting. That's funny because my DevOps team is very much like hands-on. They definitely want to help out. I didn't think that was a mentality.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool that that's the mentality of DevOps or cloud.
Yeah, it's a bit of a different culture. And I think why choose it over programming? You are still doing programming. It's just a little bit of a different kind. The salary's higher, significantly higher at the moment. So
that's great.
Yeah, and also I think development, you're not going to be able to avoid cloud for very much longer as developers. For most cases, you know, you're having to start learning DevOps concepts, having to start learning cloud concepts anyway.
Yeah,
the
definitely.
direction predominantly to cloud like architectures. So yeah, if you're interested as well, like reach out anytime, not just in the Q&A. I think I didn't answer how we get more women to stay.
Yeah, this is
the inclusion part. Like, so it's representation, having more women come into that industry, but also inclusion. So making room. Basically, men need to make room, like, and make space and kind of, understand that people communicate differently, people bring different ways of being, and those are all valuable in their own way.
Absolutely, yeah. I think on DevOps at my company, there's one woman, but she's great. I love her. She's super cool.
Yeah, in tech, it's like, 13 to I think 25% on average women, if you're lucky. DevOps, it's like 4 to 6, I think. It's very, very low at the moment.
So we have let's do, so I think our agenda might change. There's 14 people here, but I think we could just all keep it and maybe not go into breakout rooms. And if everyone wants to share their LinkedIn, we can just do it. And just for the last 10 minutes, just everyone hang out. And so for one more minute, can you just tell us what your advice is to everyone here? So like as engineers, so yeah, like for people who are new or people who have been in their positions for a while, what's your best advice to us? Gwenny, last question, and then we'll do some Q&A.
I think firstly, remember everything's learnable in tech. Those are all learnable skills. So no matter how hard it is, no matter how confusing it is, it's learnable. It's not something you're born with. It's not something you're just good at. It's something you learn. That's probably my biggest lesson. So if you're interested,
that's super awesome.
You'll be able to learn it. Like, just give yourself lots of opportunities to that's how your brain learns. You give yourself lots of opportunities to encounter that information. And you also, one of the things in education that happens is girls tend to be interested, and I think women in education, when subjects are meaningful. So when they're actually making a meaningful change, where boys don't tend to have that difference. So for women, I think it's important to find, not always, but if this is true for you, it means that it's important for you to kind of find a place where you feel like you are making a difference, or, you have a purpose. So I think also doing inner work to figure out what your purpose is in the world, and what you want to leave behind you, or what you want to work towards in your own kind of small way. So just by being not a dude in tech, or by being an ally, if you're a man, and as a white woman being an ally for those with less privilege, that's, I think, that's making a difference just in itself.
Right.
So,
absolutely.
I'd say second, educate yourself about not only yourself and what you'll experience in tech and the world, but why things are the way they are, and that it's not always, it's not right, it's not fair. So trust yourself when you're feeling something's not going right, or you're not feeling good, and find those people that will support you and advocate for you. So, there are, I know in Obama's office, someone's office, these women came up with this strategy where if they had men kind of taking the ideas, and they talked to each other about it, and they ended up just always repeating, and I love that you agreed with her and that you liked her idea. It's such a good one. So, find strategies to kind of manage situations if they're going to be challenging. And lastly, I think just you can add value without knowing everything is really important to know. So if you're new, you add value, like I said, just by being there, by being yourself. At all levels, tech's constantly changing. So you add value just by bringing your perspective into the space and by bringing what knowledge you do have and, you know, applying that. So I think have confidence in yourself that if you're walking into, you know, a project or a room and you don't know all the tech, that's kind of standard in tech. A lot of you have been in tech, you know that. But yeah, particularly
no, absolutely. I love that advice. All very, very good advice. You can always bring something to the table. So let's open up the room. If you want to unmute yourself or raise your hand, and I can just call on you if you have any questions for Gwenny. Anyone want to start? Is Kim still here? No.
I guess I can start if no one.
Awesome, go for it.
Just because, thank you so much, by the way. This is really good conversation. But I know y'all mentioned like cloud ops and DevOps, and I honestly do not know the difference very much. So I guess what would you say the difference between the two is, and why did you choose like cloud ops over DevOps?
Yeah, great question. So firstly, cloud computing I'll just explain that to make that clear difference between programming. It's really just resources that, you know, people used to have physically, like physical infrastructure, like a server. People found a way to programmatically, so via code, abstract that away. So for example, like if you have your computer, you might find a way to actually talk to the computer with your programming and say, hey, we're going to allocate this amount of space to someone else. So that's how Amazon started, like basically the cloud when they did that back it's only 2006. So when we talk about ops, that's operations, and that's where the term DevOps comes from, and cloud ops. So operations traditionally was separate to software development. So in the past, it would be, you know, like 2 years to create a piece of software. Remember, like it would be like on a CD or something, and they would, a company would purchase the license, like if it was a big enterprise kind of piece of software, and you wouldn't be able
out of the box.
Yeah, and you wouldn't be able to fix it very easily because it would have taken them 2 years to develop it because things were much slower. They would develop it to these like specifications and then be like, okay, we're done, your turn to operate it. And so operations was its own space, which was actually, you know, the running and the kind of support around the running of the software. As technology has developed, that process has become faster. So we ended up having DevOps, so development and operations, instead of them being separate, they've kind of come together. And it seems like I look at it now and I'm like, isn't that what it should have always been? You know what I mean? But it wasn't, and it kind of couldn't have been. So that was the concept that also, like early 2000s, I think, that was the concept that the team that develops the software should also run it, so that there wasn't this separation and these people kind of not understanding what the issues were in the actual production environment. So cloud is talking about the kind of environment. It's like on the internet, abstracted away. And it means that, you know, you can rent a huge amount of compute power, or you can rent a huge networking capability without having to actually buy that stuff yourself, that physical infrastructure. So that's cloud. And then cloud ops is just operating anything, any cloud resources or cloud infrastructure. DevOps is a kind of more umbrella term, and it's almost what developers have done for a long time. So when anyone was trying to make something more efficient or trying to automate something, so maybe they write like a script in code that actually tells the program to run and then tells it to stop and then tells it to delete resources or something. That's essentially the same thing that is DevOps. It's doing things efficiently and in a repeatable way and in a scalable way. So you can kind of say that cloud ops is a part of DevOps, and you could say that cloud ops and DevOps are kind of similar or interchangeable. For me, I'm using DevOps and cloud interchangeably. The difference and what appealed to me, like in DevOps in particular, is that the culture, it's a culture of like improvement, of continuous improvement, of being able to deliver software. So companies like Google kind of pioneered those approaches. That's like site reliability engineering. So being able to have a platform that's very robust, that doesn't break, and that you can continuously add new code into production at a scale that like boggles the mind. So that's what interests me, yeah, in DevOps and cloud. And yeah, they're kind of terms, they're not necessarily different, if that makes sense. So literally they're different. How they're used is not necessarily that different. You'll hear DevOps a lot. You'll also hear cloud a lot. And then you hear a million different jobs. So like my current job title is cloud engineer. And like you can hear that as platform engineer, infrastructure software engineer, like cloud specialist. There's all these kind of terms for that same role.
We even talked about like solutions engineer. That was the one I asked you about, which is also kind of like an architecture role.
Yeah, totally. Does that answer your question, Tatiana?
Yeah, that did. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Sonia, do you have something? Do you have a question?
I guess one thing, I also came from like a background of not, transitioning to tech from a former background. And one thing I get a lot is people make comments like, oh, I'm so surprised you don't have like a computer science degree, or like,
no.
Is there any like advice or you would give to like, I guess, counteract those kind of comments, or just like make it, I guess, spread the awareness, like, people come from different backgrounds and that's okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah, that's a microaggression.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I was
like, but yeah, I think firstly for you internally, you have to find a way to feel okay with that, because you don't want to be giving it your energy. It doesn't deserve your energy. In terms of like improving that happening across the world, or like where you are, it's not on you, but things like representation help, and those are barriers to women and girls entering and staying in technology. So I think just by being yourself, talking to people all the time, being proud of your story. Like I'm really proud that I have an academic background. I did a master's in like applied linguistics, and I was always really like, I like that way of learning. But in tech, I'm not. Like I'm boot camp, not that much experience. Yeah, but I think it's seeing the value in that, like that is what tech needs at the moment most. So my response to those kind of things is like to the kind of men I talk to that don't understand why, the ones who are like, why do women get a scholarship and not men? Like, why is there Women's Day, not Men's Day? It's like you firstly do the research yourself, but secondly, like the kind of reason is because you guys came into tech and made this huge mess and made this industry that is creating technology that is excluding people and is not able to be used by everyone, and is, super ableist, like white supremacist, essentially, patriarchal. So I think for you, you are exactly what tech needs. Like your non-traditional background is exactly what is going to fix this mess. So unfortunately, you are,
definitely,
you're also kind of an outsider, like in that sense, because they've built this kind of exclusive gatekeeping culture. They like the kind of majority, obviously not everyone. But yeah, I think really stand solid in the knowledge that you are exactly what you're, like the superhero that they need, to lead them out of this and to help them see a better and a different, more inclusive world. So like, yeah, I think just know that really strongly within yourself, and then just respond from that place kind of thing, or don't, like, just be like, yeah, like, are you jealous or whatever, like whatever your response is. Because yeah, degree, in my mind, it was just like, why spend like, 4 years of my life when I want to get into technology as soon as possible? And I'm already making like 20 grand more than I was like when I was a senior curriculum writer. I was very established in my curriculum career. So, why would someone do that? It's a kind of, you have to be a certain, I think, level of privilege to do tertiary education, particularly in America, where it's very expensive. So you did it like the smart way, you know what I mean? So good on you.
Yeah.
Well done. And be proud of yourself.
Yes, I like that smile. That's what I want to see. I have a boot camp too. We all have, whatever, who cares? Like, and I remember a guy said the same thing to me. Well, how did you learn? Can you? And I was like, I went to a boot camp and I am hanging in there with you guys. I was converted to perm. So thank you very much. You guys are giving me the features and I'm coding them and I'm shipping them with little to no bugs. So I'm doing fine. But you just, again, don't internally, I think, don't let it get to you. It gets to me too, right? And I didn't say that to him, but but you internally, you know, just you're doing great and just don't let it get to you, you know, keep going. And I love how Gwenny said you're like the superhero hero. You are, you're bringing a different perspective. That's what we need. All right, in April, I know we're over right now, so we should probably wrap up soon, but I do want to get April's question. April, what is your question?
Hi, sorry for taking up time.
No, you're no.
More space, ma'am.
I was super inspired by your story, especially because I'm a teacher right now, and I'm trying to transition into tech. I'm in a boot camp right now, but I'm listening to your story is really great. But I was just wondering if there's any advice that you could give on how to actually break into the industry. I know you talked about your first experience with your first job, but do you have any advice at all in just breaking in? Because I know that first job is really tough to get.
Yeah, I do. For me as an introvert, the best thing I did was volunteer, because I would go to a lot of meetups just to educate myself on what the kind of different roles were in the industry, what the different spaces were, and I just loved learning as well. So if you have, that's also a privilege, having that time and energy to go. But if you have it, go to meetups, start talking to people. I would just force myself to like say hello to people. And because some girl did that to me once, she just came up and said, "Hey, how you going?" And I was like, "Oh, I can just do that." And so I just made it a rule that I would like say hi to anyone that was kind of by themselves and just start talking to them. So firstly, like expand your network that way, or in whatever way works for you. Like you can have a quota where you just make yourself go to something once a month. And if you've done that, you're happy, you're off the hook. If you're an extrovert, you won't have that issue. You can just like go more kind of thing. But yeah, definitely just start talking to people, start asking questions, and find a way that feels comfortable for you to do that. So maybe you just start a blog and it's just like you're interested in other people in tech and you start interviewing them. And that's your way that you talk to people. For me, volunteering for Girls in Tech meant I met all these people across the industry in different places. And I also there's a lot of programs to improve diversity in tech. So the equivalents, I don't know exactly. I know there are the boot camps in New York, but we have programs like one by the government called Grad Girls, which is like employers wanting to hire more women, host this group of grad girls who are just entry level, people like us, career changing. And they talk about the jobs they have in the company, like what they offer. And the reason I got my first internship was because I was in that program, because they'd closed interviews, but they were like, no, we will give you an interview because you're in this program. So I also encourage you to have an eye out for programs like that. And lastly, if volunteering is just great. So if you have a cause that you care about that can connect to technology, or start one yourself, like finding those kind of groups and those interactions is amazing. And so I still have people contact me looking for roles because I've done a lot of volunteering in that space. So for like Code Like a Girl, I volunteered for Girls in Tech. I run Women Who Code with another 2 women. So I think if you can find that connection with the community and build it from there in whatever way that makes you feel good and kind of connects you and uplifts you, that is how, it's really how a lot of people get jobs. They talk about the hidden job network. Often they're not advertised, or they'll make a role for you if they really want you. So I recommend that. And also potentially starting to find those companies you like the sound of, and starting to maybe reach out to people that work there and asking them for coffee, just to find out about the role, how they like the company, or maybe the recruiters, and saying like, this is what I'm working towards. What kind of skills would you like to see? Those kind of conversations.
Right. No, those are great.
You'll find somewhere.
Yeah, you will, definitely. And Sahara had her hand raised. So really quickly, last question, and then we'll wrap up. Sahara, what's your question? Hi.
Hi.
Sorry,
Hi.
I'm going to go very fast asking this question.
No, it's fine. We're cool. You're cool. What's your
Okay.
question?
So I am currently interviewing, and so my question is, what would you say are the top 3 questions to ask when interviewing to see if the environment and the culture is the right and safe one for you? I feel like
Oh, wow.
asking what's the work environment like or what's the work-life balance like, they aren't the right questions to get an honest and true answer. So yeah.
Oh, that's a great question, Sahara.
Yeah, really great question. I love thinking about this as well. I've asked so many. I grill them now. Like I'm a psycho. Just like, how many women have you got on your leadership team? Like at
Oh
all
my
levels,
God.
what is representation in your management? What's the diversity balance
Yeah.
like? When you hire, how are you like mitigating against unconscious bias? I also look out for red flags. So I think before you're thinking about the questions, it's also research. So researching that company, researching reviews, researching who's on their board of directors. Is it diverse? Researching what their interview
Right.
process is. Is there a lot of gatekeeping? So like you know, at the entry level role, Sahara, is it entry level or like mid or senior?
So I am a bit entry and I'm in the middle. I'm like I have 3 years of experience, so I'm like the cusp of mid and entry.
Yeah, okay. So for me, like as an entry level, I would literally not apply if they had a tech test. I was like, nope, that's a red flag that they're gatekeeping. You know what I mean? So you can also, I think, ask about the interview process and make your own mind up if that is gatekeeping. Are they making allowances for people? So for example, if there is a technical test, are they paying you for your time? Are they telling you that, you know, if life gets in the way or if something happens, are they flexible? So I've had companies that are like, you get a day or whatever. I've had companies say, take your time, there's no deadline, absolutely no pressure. And if it's just something for us to talk about, and if you can't do it, no problem. So that to me says they're more inclusive than the other one. In the actual interview, firstly, who's interviewing you? You know, is it someone that's going to be on your team or not? Because if not, I would also be asking, can I talk to whoever you're going to be working most closely with? So like if it's the hiring manager, the lead engineer, something like that, I'd be asking who those kind of people are that you're going to be working with, and if there are other women or gender diverse people on the team or people from different backgrounds on the team. I would potentially ask about a policy if you couldn't find it online. So like, what policies do they have around DEI and what initiatives? So often companies have published, like if they've got initiatives like that. But if you don't see any, you can ask that, and that's a good indicator. Like if it's a priority for their company, if it's not in their values or their principles or their metrics, it's probably not a priority. And there's a like quite a few others. But things like, you know, why have people left like in the past from these roles? What is the opportunity for like progression like, or how do you mentor people and make sure they feel included in the company? Like questions around that, around how
I like that one. Like the progression, and also how do you mentor, you know, how do you include? Or you could also ask, like, what are the different groups? Do you have special groups, like a special Slack group for women? You know, I don't know how specific you may want to be, but do you offer things like that where, you know, there's, if this is a remote opportunity, is there like a Slack channel, or do you have different diverse Slack channels that I can join?
Yeah, there's that flip side as well, that you don't want to be sounding, you know, too difficult like at the start.
Right.
So
I would hope they have like a female. At my company, we have like a Slack channel that's like women of a moment. So it's like all the women in our company. So I mean, and it's not even just like tech, it's women, you know. So those are, I don't know how you'd like to phrase that, but like that goes to the inclusion, right?
Yeah, potentially just in what ways do you foster inclusion, like in the company?
Right.
And they should be able to list off like a bunch of things.
Absolutely. Right.
That's also a red flag. Like I think it's that the questions are often kind of indirect.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's great.
Another one, like how do you ensure promotion equity and pay equity? So that I grilled my company on that, and they've got like a spreadsheet, they track it, they have to have numbers.
That's good.
Yeah, but if they don't, I'm like, well, you have unconscious bias in your hiring and promotion process, and that's a problem, you know. Sahara, hopefully like some of those are helpful. There are also lists online, like so you can also look that up and it's kind of about also what's important to you. So yeah, I'd think as well about what kind of things matter to you the most, and then don't be afraid to just grill them. They're lucky to have you, so they need to satisfy your like questions in the interview at a bare minimum.
Yeah, this is all like super helpful. I've always like struggled like in my interviews, so this is all really helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
And also
Yeah,
pay attention to how they listen to you, Sahara. That was something that recently, like my last job, my job right now, I felt like they really heard me. If they're listening to you, that's a good sign. It's not only about you answering and your responses, it's also about how they respond to a question. So if they ask you about a pain point that you had at a last company and you tell them a story, like, are they like, okay, great? Or are they just like writing down? Or are they like, how did you handle that? Wow, you came out so well. Like that you were a champion, I mean, they might not use those words, but right. Like if they're commiserating with you, then that's a good sign, I think.
Definitely
But
for empathy too, because if
right,
if you lack
you want
empathy,
them
I
to
don't
have
think
an
that's
idea.
a good environment.
No, definitely not. But that was like Gwenny's first job. It wasn't, they were, and maybe they didn't have much empathy there. But I guess we're at time. So I don't know if there's any other like urgent questions we could answer, but I think we've pretty much, I think we're in a good place. And thank you to everyone. If you have any last words, Gwenny, anything else you want to say? I'll leave it to you. But
No,
thank you guys.
It's really fun to be.
This has been fun.
Yeah. And just I wish you all well, like in your tech journeys or tech adjacent journeys. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for being here with us, Gwenny. It's been a pleasure to get to know you. Even just, it's so nice to have like speak to you about everything that's going on in our industry. It's easy to like fire off like grievances with you, which is really nice to have that support, right? And I know I'll have to come visit Melbourne Women Who Code sometime soon, a meetup. Let us know and we can post some events. But thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you. I'm very grateful for your experience and for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. And yeah, reach out on LinkedIn if you've got questions as well, or you want me to see your resume or anything.
Yes. And I'm gonna put Slack. Join us on Slack, guys, if you're not already there. Thanks, Gwenny. You're the best.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
See you later. Bye.